fundamental because all businesses in the end today have a sort of social license to operate, which means basically that on one side there are physical limits in terms of emissions that we all have to comply with, and then on the other hand, there is also an expectation from customers that are more and more inclined to make their own choices on the basis of commitments that businesses are ready to take in order to contribute to a net zero economy. It's also important, with reference to your second question, to be able to monitor those commitments, which means establish a baseline and then measure all the efforts and the result of those efforts in terms of reduction of emissions. And this is fundamental because apart from committing, going back to the idea of having a social license to operate, is very, very important to be able to prove that companies are implementing actions and those actions are translating into measurable results. Our experience is that companies across the globe are facing very different situations. There are companies that are already committing to reduce carbon emissions and are very much aware of what it takes and which are different options available to reduce these carbon emissions. But in most of the cases, what we are experiencing is that companies are ready to commit, understand the importance of committing to a net zero economy, but on the other hand, are not yet completely aware of the options that are potentially available to achieve this target. So what we try to do together with these companies, first of all, to define together the carbon footprint that becomes the baseline to which we have to refer. Second point is to identify what needs to be done, where and how. So in other words, all the different actions that will help the company to achieve the environmental objective that they are targeting to achieve at the minimum possible cost. Because once you want to achieve a certain level of reduction, you have multiple tools and instruments from virtual PPAs, renewable energy, distributed energy generation, battery energy storage, energy efficiency, demand response. It's important to put together all these building blocks and build an optimal strategy to either maximize the environmental benefit or minimize the cost associated to the achievement of the target that this company has the ambition to reach. Talking to our partners and looking at data that we are able to collect and to manage, we get a clear evidence that in most of the cases, the scope 3 emissions, so the emissions that are associated to both the supply chain and the customers, can account for more than 60, 70, 80, or even 90% of the total emission. So starting by addressing scope 1 and scope 2 emission is a very good first step, but the reality is that if we really want to tackle climate change and contribute to a net zero economy, it's fundamental to be able to understand the magnitude of the scope 3 emission and to establish a relationship with suppliers and customers in order to define a plan that will allow the companies to reduce not only scope 1 and 2 emissions, but also, and mainly I would say, scope 3. Because we cannot forget about scope 3 emission if we are truly targeting to achieve a net zero economy. Joining CDP represents a tremendous opportunity for Enel X. We are joining a group of companies that is genuinely committed to reduce carbon emission, and we are joining an initiative that is pushing in the direction of promoting a standard that will allow us to track emission and to monitor progresses. What we would like to do by joining CDP is basically become part of a network where we can offer support to our partners in order to help those partners to achieve their environmental objective. What we do for them and together with them is establishing a carbon footprint, monitoring the evolution of emission, so doing data collection and data management, Communication, which is very important because it's important also to share with our stakeholders all the effort and the results that we're able to achieve. We also have them to define a proper governance model, which is another key aspect because you need people to be accountable in order to be able to reach those results. And we also help our partners to engage together with their stakeholders, namely, I would say, employees, suppliers, and customers, because as we said before, only by involving these stakeholders, eventually we will be able to achieve a net zero economy.